I think we can all agree that as adventurers, we've all made our fair share of mistakes. Of course, this one I made was a bit bigger than most. Almost cost me my own life. I was hired to excise a haunted house. I was just expecting an old ghost. I didn't think there'd be a death knight waiting for me at that old house. I tried to get away, but it was too fast. And just as its black sword was swinging down to cut my head off, there was a flash of blinding light. I heard a roar, and the beat of heavy wings. When my sight returned, the Death Knight was nothing more than a pile of ashes, and an old man stood in his place. He seemed the wizarding type, with a friendly smile, large beard, big pointy hat, and a platinum scarf. Oddest thing about him was the 7 golden canaries that flew about, landing on his fingers, the rim of his hat, and on his shoulders. It must have been him, Fizban the Fabulous. I wonder why he bothered to rescue an old warrior priest like myself. And where did he come from, anyway? The Platinum Dragon, the Lord of the North Wind, the Justice Maker. This heavenly dragon has many titles, but his true name is Bahamut. Many have heard of him, for he is the god of justice along the heavily populated Sword Coast. But few know of his origins, or his true power. In this video, we will explore how this legendary heavenly dragon came to be, and where he makes his home. Bahamut's origins are well known, but so many worship him that his story has been told dozens of times, and has gone through many changes. But there are 2 largely accepted stories about the birth of this mighty dragon god. Both tales begin in the time before gods, when primal magic spewed forth unchecked across the cosmos, and immensely powerful beings known as primordials ruled as supreme. Over time, the chaos of the cosmos began to settle, and a new planet was created. This world was called Abir Toril, and it was populated by mortals. Mortals who sent prayers to the heavens. They prayed for everything, for knowledge and power, for protection and health, for fertility and plenty. These prayers gave rise to new beings in the cosmos, ones that threatened the supremacy of the primordials, the gods. Eventually, the primordials moved against the gods, desiring the power of mortal worship for themselves. And thus began the Dawn War, the war for creation itself. This war between gods and primordials was the birthplace of Bahamut, and is the reason there are 2 stories about his origins. For when the Dawn War ended, it ended in a stalemate. The planet of Abir Toril was split in half. The world of Abir was given to the primordials, and the world of Toril given to the gods. The first story about the birth of Bahamut is told by the mortals of the world of Abir. According to their legends, Bahamut was born of the corpse of his father. Bahamut's father was an immensely powerful dragon of creation known as Askorath. During the Dawn War, Askorath faced off against a terrible, mad primordial known as the King of Terror. With a cosmic axe, the King of Terror cleaved Askorath in 2, splitting the greatest of all dragons from head to tail. No sooner had the corpse hit the ground than did each side begin to pulse and churn, becoming 2 new draconic deities. From Askorath's left side rose Bahamut, and from the right rose Tiamat. The 2 draconic siblings worked together to slay the King of Terror and avenge their father. After the King of Terror's body fell, the twin dragon gods gazed at one another for a split moment, and immediately fell to fighting, savagely trying to tear the other to shreds. The second telling of Bahamut's birth comes from the world of Toril. In this tale, Askorath does split in 2, but he does so intentionally. He wished to create the ultimate species of dragon that would dominate the entire cosmos. But he could not do this alone. Instead, Askarath used his immense power to split his essence and personality in two, creating Bahamut and Tiamat respectively, in the hopes that they would breed and create this ultimate dragon race. But the twin dragon gods were far too different and far too similar in all the wrong ways, and immediately fell to fighting one another, each attempting to kill the other. Regardless of how they came to be, the battle between Tiamat and Bahamut ended in a stalemate. Tiamat now resides within Avernus, one of the 9 hells, but we will speak more of the evil dragon queen another time. With the Dawn Wars over, Bahamut set about creating his own mortal breed of dragons. Dragons that bore scales of a metallic sheen, that of bronze, silver, copper, or gold. Dragons that would strongly feel the innate nobility of their species, with an intense desire to impose law and smite evil. For a time, these metallic dragons adored their platinum father, and worshipped him as the embodiment of all they were made to value: honor, justice, nobility, and the force of good against the force of evil. The children of both Bahamut and Tiamat swiftly began to populate the mortal world, and brought about the Age of Dragons. An age when the dragons laid waste to the original mortal races, and conquered half the planet. Content with their rightful status as rulers of the world, they enjoyed an age of prosperity and unchecked supremacy. But this golden age was not to last. A new player soon entered the stage of the world, a race whose size and power allowed them to match the dragons in combat, and whose great kingdom threatened the dragon's status as the dominant force in the world. The Giants had come. The kingdom of giants was known as Ostoria, and it waged war against the Empire of Dragons. This war lasted 1,000 years, with neither side able to fully overwhelm the other. When the war finally ended, both sides lay in ruins. The dragons, in their individual pride, blamed one another for their failure to win the 1,000 Years' War. The noble, metallic dragons blamed the evil machinations of their cousins, the chromatic dragons, for the failure of their empire. The chromatic dragons, in turn, blamed the metallics for being too weak to risk everything to slay the giants. Tempers flared, and egged on by the voices of Tiamat and Bahamut, the dragons entered into a bitter civil war, the remnants of which still linger on to this day. These events became known as the Dragonfall Wars, and when they had ended, all dragons swore off worship of both Bahamut and Tiamat, that any gods that would allow their grand empire to fall so completely did not deserve worship. As a primordial dragon, Bahamut did not require the faith of mortals to exist, but as a god, he felt his power waning terribly when all of his children abandoned him for his failings. In an effort to maintain his status as a deity and find redemption for his failings, Bahamut moved from pantheon to pantheon, offering aid to the strongest and most noble he could find. After many centuries, Bahamut encountered a new god, Torm. Torm himself was a greater deity. As god of law, he laid claim to millions upon millions of mortal followers. Recognizing the potential within Bahamut, Torm offered the Platinum Dragon a place within the Faerunian pantheon, but only if Bahamut would enter into a divine pact with Torm. Bahamut would become subservient to Torm in exchange for protection, divine status, and his own church of mortal followers. Sensing a kindred spirit within Torm, Bahamut accepted the offer and was brought into the Faerunian pantheon as the dragon god of justice. Like any proper dragon, Bahamut has his own lair, and like any proper god, he makes his lair in the heavens, specifically the heaven of Mount Celestia, a seven-summited mountain that embodies all goodness and law. Bahamut's palace lies between the first and fourth summits of the Mountain of Heaven. It is a wondrous, glittering fortress, every inch made of beautiful treasures that shine like a beacon on the horizon. The outside is pure, polished platinum that reflects the brilliant light of Mount Celestia. The windows, made from precious gemstones, set in rims of silver and gold, and cut to such fineness that they resemble stained glass. The interior of the palace is just as magnificent. Floors made of hammered mithril sit below walls of inlaid copper and ivory. Dozens of knights and dragons train and study within these halls together, acting as both guardians and students of their god. It is well known that this palace comprises the entirety of Bahamut's treasure hoard. Every piece of treasure he acquires, or has sacrificed to him, is magically absorbed into the palace. It is said that when enough such treasure has been absorbed this way, the palace shifts and expands, creating new halls, rooms, or towers. The bones of thousands of would-be thieves lie hidden within the silvery walls. The voices of the former owners of these bones whisper words of warning to all intruders and would-be thieves against the folly of stealing from the Platinum Dragon. Bahamut's palace is a wondrous place. It is surrounded by an incredible windstorm which can be breached only by Bahamut's faithful, the faithful of Torm, or those with express permissions. The palace is also connected to the elemental plane of air by 4 portals, one for each of the 4 winds. These portals are guarded by celestial archons, or great heavenly dragons, and none can leave through them without permission. Bahamut was once thought to live in the elemental plane of air, for he spends much time within the plane. He only does so as the plane of air is the perfect place for him to meditate. Bahamut's palace is filled with legions of his faithful followers, both mortal and dragon alike, but it is rather noisy. But the elemental plane of air is quiet. Being little more than a vast empty blue sky, it is the perfect place for Bahamut to stretch his wings, relax, and meditate. There is much more to be said about Bahamut, his aspects and his powers, as well as his followers and religious dogma, but that will be covered in the next video. For now, keep an eye on the sky for great wings of glorious platinum. Thank you so much for watching, you guys. I originally had the Bahamut lore video as one long video, but it was way too long, so I had to split it up into 2 parts. Part 2 is going to cover Bahamut's aspects, his power, and his religious practices, or the practices he expects his followers to have. Also, you know I love hearing from you guys. Well, now I want to hear what you think the spookiest, scariest parts of Dungeons & Dragons are. Anything from monsters to spells to locations to even playable classes. If you think it's scary or just really creepy, leave it in the comments below. Eventually, I'll take those comments and put them into a community poll where we will vote on the top 3 scariest parts of D&D. Each of those parts will be put into their own Halloween special throughout the entire month of October. Thank you so much again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.